Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick and we're here in San Jose in very hot, very sunny California at the NFV World Congress 2017. And I'm talking with a really good old mate, Phil McKinney, President and CEO of CableLabs. Phil, it's great to see you and the cowboy boots. You've moved out to the west. Virginia's a thing of the past, and now you're in Colorado.
Thank you, Martin. It's always good to see you again. And yes, I've fully entrenched myself into the Western lifestyle in Colorado.
I can see. Yes. Good job we didn't bring the hat. All right, let's get to this, Phil. Look, imagine that you are an invigilator or something like that, and you're looking at the way things have been going in NFV and all the rest of it, and you're sort of doing a balance sheet. What do you think vendors have to do to convince CSPs that the transformation journey, which is difficult and can be expensive, is worth all the pain for the end result?
The challenge that all of the CSPs are facing really is trying to see what is these kinds of capabilities going to enable them. Right? We're all thinking about what is that 5 years out type. This is not a one-year transformation, snap your fingers, click your heels, and you're done.
Sure.
All of these transformations are incredibly hard, even if you go back through all of the generations of telecom change. So in this case, it's really those CSPs that have a vision for the capabilities and services that I think are the early leaders in making the transformation now. And some others are kind of holding back. They're going to let somebody else take the arrows and being the first one down the path. So you kind of start to see this stretching out. I think really what the vendors have to do is show a vision to those CSPs about what happens at the other side of the transformation. It's not about who does better product management or better maintenance and those kinds of things. It's really what do you enable of new capabilities, new products, new services, and therefore new revenue streams that the transformation enables when you get to the other end.
It's a really good answer. I like that a lot. Who do you think, I mean, we know that NFV and SDN came about as a result of the service provider saying, look, we want a bit more control. We don't want to be locked into these sort of permanent fixtures with a particular vendor. And the vendors reacted to that and said, right, we'll change. Do you think that change is now going through its completely, or is it still formative?
Albeit it's been, what, now 4 years since this whole thing really kicked off. We're still in the early stages, right? It's hard when you've got established vendors that have had a very long established business model and all of a sudden make a hard left turn and change the entire culture within the organization. So what you're seeing now is you're seeing some younger, smaller startup companies who really have embraced kind of the SDN NFV world. And that's actually causing some of those bigger vendors to start to change direction. But it's hard when you've got a well-established installed base, well-established business model, sales organization, all the things that get wrapped up into a business approach. So I think we're still in the early stages, but I think the progress is actually accelerating. We're seeing more of the CSPs starting to make the transformation, starting to make the changes, and you're seeing more of the vendors, and more importantly, more of the vendors working together. You know, SDN NFV is not the traditional telecom solution where you're going to get from one single vendor the entire solution.
Sure.
It requires the vendors to work together. So that's also causing some changes in the industry. But you're starting to see much more partnering, much more engagement on the open source side of it to leverage everybody's resources to get kind of the basic in place. But you know, we're not done. This is still a hard process. Any transformation is, and you just got to go in eyes wide open.
Thank you. Moving on to something different. We've been in this game a while, to say the least.
Speak for yourself.
And we know that the number of acronyms and initials and buzz phrases that come along all the time. Then one of the latest, and I must admit, some people have different ideas of what it is, as usual, is this thing cloud native. What do you think it means in terms of CSPs and the vendors?
When people talk about cloud native, what they're really talking about is the services and capabilities of the network that typically sits out at some hardware platform somewhere in the network now becomes native to the cloud. It just, all of those capabilities sit there. Now, I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian. I actually
Surely not.
Yes. So I actually think we're going to see the whole concept of a cloud get blown up. The idea of aggregating everything into one big central cloud infrastructure is not the model going forward, because it's no longer about speeds and feeds of a network. it really is going to break down to low latency. You've got to reduce the loop time if you're going to create highly interactive, highly engaging, highly exciting kinds of services. In that case, distance is your enemy. So what we see and what we're predicting is basically what we call the reverse cloud. Everything used to get aggregated up into one big cloud. We're going to see it get chopped up and then highly dispersed. So where a company may have 3, 4, 5 data centers in like the United States, you're literally going to see tens of thousands of micro data centers scattered throughout the network, and that's where the compute will actually occur. Because that way then you can reduce that distance, you can drive very, very low latency, and therefore create new kinds of services you can't even imagine today. And that's where the power of SDN NFV really comes to play.
Interesting. Explain a bit more, Phil, if you would. I mean, I'm really interested in this. So everybody's been rattling on about the cloud for so long, so much investment, so much R&D's gone into it. What do you think will occasion the fact that this will now, in a way, if a cloud can fragment, you think that this sort of proliferation of mini data centers is going to be really important?
I think it's critical because if you're going to do, for instance, what we would call like a social VR experience.
Yeah.
So I'm in Colorado, you're back in London, you and I want to have a chat via VR. The distance to do that is going to cause some real challenges for that, that overall experience. If I can actually load that compute locally close to me and then close to you, and therefore not have to haul all of that large amount of data back and forth, but do it much more close to where the experience is, then I can make it feel like you and I are sitting in the exact same room. So there are services that we're predicting that are going to come in the future that will not happen in the traditional cloud model of today. And so therefore, what's the alternative? You have to have lots of data centers. Well, you can chop them up. You can go from 5 data centers to 25 data centers. But in that case, you're still constrained in some cases. And what we're predicting is literally not just doubling your data centers, but do it as an order of magnitude. So you're talking about thousands and thousands of these micro data centers. And it has impact on everything from collaboration to interactivity to gaming, to you name it, that requires any kind of two-way interaction. This is the model that really is the only model that can really make those kinds of experiences work.
We're going slightly off piece, but I want to follow this up because it's really interesting. So where does that leave Google and Amazon, people like that, Netflix?
Interesting question. The question becomes down to is, when you're pushing data one direction, like you're streaming video, then the latency doesn't become an issue. So I think you're going to see kind of a mixed model where you'll have, when I'm doing content streaming, I may do it in fewer data centers. It's where this interactivity, where I'm trying to close the loop on two-way kinds of interactions or experiences or services or new kinds of products, where this kind of reverse cloud model plays out. But it's going to point to the fact that the companies that are building up these big aggregated data centers have to start rethinking what that role of those data centers are, or what kinds of services do I put in the big data centers versus what do I push closer to the edge.
Is that happening now? Is the rethink underway?
I don't know, because I can't speak on behalf of them, but I can tell you in the cable industry, it's a conversation we have all the time. And at CableLabs, we are the innovation lab for the industry. We don't build products. Our job every day is to wake up and invent the future. This is one of those areas that we are spending a lot of time on. And we started talking about this over a year ago when we released the Near Future video, because when we point out those kinds of visions of the future, and you look at, okay, if I was going to deliver that today, how would I do that? Distance becomes the big problem.
Absolutely fascinating. Phil McKinney, as usual, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Martin.